Good evening, everyone. We welcome you to the webinar session by PIM alumni. And we have eminent panel here. We have Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri, the Director PIM, and also the Patron PIM alumni as the moderator today. And we have Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksha, who is the Chairman of People's Bank and People's Leasing, and he's been the board member of many private and public sector companies in the past. And we also have Mr. Aravind Pereira, who's the chairman of Singer Finance PLC, and also he's in the board of Haley's Aventura, Haley's Pentons, and also he's served in many private and public sector companies, and he is the chairman of some PLC, who's engineer and also marketer, accountant, prestigious PIM. We have Suranga Hera, who's the CEO of English Tea Shop. And then we have Mr. Ravi Edirisinghe. He's the Group CEO of McLaren's Group, and also he's a visiting lecturer of PIM. So we have a eminent panel here, and I'm leaving it in the hands of Professor Dharmasiri to thank you.
Hello everyone. First of all, hope you can hear me clearly. I got one chat message saying that can't hear. Can you all hear me clearly? I hope that is the first fundamental requirement.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. And I hope all of you are safe, sound and serene. So we are going through a tough time, a turbulent time, a challenging time. And as they say, tough times never last, but tough people do. And when the going gets tough, tough gets going. So this webinar is going to be one with a difference. It is not just sharing knowledge. It's not sharing theories, concepts, and frameworks. It's all about being practical. It's all about being doing the right thing at the right time in the right manner. And I'm so happy that PIMA got all these wonderful people together. And PIMA being the premier postgraduate alumni body in Sri Lanka, the network, the largest alumni of any MBA provided in Sri Lanka. And another feature is that all the panelist features today are prestigious PIM products. And that gives me humble happiness being the leader of PIM. So this is all about leading the transformation from survival to success. And we are struggling. Sometimes we don't think about people. We are really worried about profits. And at the same time, the planet is smiling. The planet is getting the much needed rest. And it's interestingly like the Third World War, as many have observed. This war is something different. It's not among people, it's between man versus nature. And as Seattle, the Red Indian chief said, the nature doesn't belong to us, we belong to the nature. So it's a clarion call for us to reconnect with the nature. At the same time, we need to revive our businesses. We need to reconnect with the reality in terms of ensuring that we have a resurgence in our businesses. So the invitation is for the business leaders to refresh and to reflect. So today we have veteran business leaders who would share their practical insights. So let me hop on the word being practical. It is not just giving concept, it's being practical. So I will have the pleasure of moderating, and let me first of all invite Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksha to give us a policy perspective with multiple hats he's wearing, being the chairman of the People's Bank, the latest accolade that he got. So Sujiva, can you give us a policy perspective, the promising prospects that we are discovering in the post-COVID-19 pandemic? So in the era of challenges and opportunities, how would the Sri Lankan policy framework help the business leaders? Sujiva?
Yeah, Professor, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Professor, and it's great pleasure and privilege to take part in this important event, especially I being one of the alumni who passed out way back in 2003. and extremely happy. And you are talking about survival to success, which is absolutely important in today's terms. And this epidemic we heard about a couple of months ago, we never thought that it's going to hit our doorsteps or our doors. But now you can see what's happening. We all are struggling. We all are struggling. And the whole economy has come to standstill. And as you are telling about the dreaming, everybody is dreaming now. As you know, Jack Ma said, you know, we must have a big dream. The dream should have some kind of shocking kind of thing for all of us. So that's what's happening. We are at home and we are dreaming day and night what's going to happen. And in the meantime, it's important to see that, first of all, let me pay my tribute to the leader of this country, and especially about the health service personnel and the other service personnel, army and others who have been able to at least control this epidemic up to a great extent. But still we are struggling to control the curve that we have been talking about. So the things are changing day by day. We thought, if you asked me about a couple of days ago, we thought that, okay, things, okay, we'll be able to get back to our officers, but unfortunately the situation got changed yesterday, because now, so that's the situation in this country at the moment. Looking at from Professor, you know, the fiscal and monetary policies as a responsible government, I can tell you that, you know, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka with the Cabinet of Ministers, President and the Ministry of Finance have taken completely measurements to make sure that the economy is under control. So these are Central Bank has taken fairly several extraordinary, which is important, extraordinary regulatory measures. This is important to provide a flexibility to the banking sector, especially banking sector when you say banking and non-banking financial institutions. This is purely to provide some sort of relief to businesses and individuals who affected by COVID. We should not forget about the fact that the Sri Lanka, we had exactly 1 year ago, there was another hit, and then we were recovering. Actually, when being island nation, you know, when there is hit, obviously there's an issue about foreign earnings. Especially there are a few areas, apparel and tourism, because there we earn a large amount of income from those two, plus remittances. But now after 1 year, we are facing this, which is very pathetic. But you can't help; we have to face the reality. Looking at this again, banking and non-banking, which is important for businesses and individuals to give some sort of relief. There are a few things that the central bank immediately, taken as a policy making body and the regulator. What is important is the capacity to recover. So there is a capacity to recover quickly the banking sector due to various, the issues that have been there, because that is important, and you need to have we need to build up a buffer, capital buffers in the system. And the other one is the current and the future liquidity levels, because as a central bank, you need to maintain the liquidity levels in the market, Professor, so which is very important. And also rapid increase in trends in non-performing loans. You would have heard, because I was talking about 1 year ago, as a result, there were major hits in every businesses in this country. So therefore, the non-performing loans have been hovering around 5%, or some cases, non-banking financial institute, it has been around 6-7%. Imagine when you have 6 trillion loan portfolio in all the sectors. So if it is 5%, you can imagine it's about 300 billion. It's not a small amount, which can be certainly can't even imagine. So as a result of all these things, the monetary board decided to introduce some important extraordinary measures, mainly to provide future, or rather further space for banks to assist COVID. That is very important, because having had so many issues, but still central bank wanted to get involved and come out with certain measures. Let me take you through few measures within my 5 or 7 minutes given, Professor.
Yes.
One is to maintain the liquidity level, which is absolutely important. So liquidity is one of the primary, to maintain the liquidity is one of the primary functions of central bank. They came out with the reduction of statutory reserve ratio, SRR we call. Why? So with commercial banks, generally it has been 5% now reduced by 1% as a result. The impact is totally about 70 billion to the market. In other words, 70 billion rupees were released to the market. So for all the banking and non-financial sector. The other one was also they came out with another proposal for refinancing facility up to 50 billion. So that is another measure that they took. Also reducing the daily deposit requirement, which impacts now. I don't have the figures for the entire industry, but I can speak out from People's Bank that itself was about 28 billion. These are fairly large amount of funds that were made available to the market. So which is very important for all of us to have a kind of a space for us to play around. And other one is important thing is about the confidence building. So that's another policy measure through which debt moratorium. I think we all are aware. I don't think that I should go nitty-gritties now at this presentation now, because debt moratorium is one of the important things, because the non-payment of capital and interest. So there are a few important areas, and concession for non-performing loans. And plus working capital loans, these are buzzword today, working capital loan that will be given at the rate of 4%. So, and interest investment loans again, about 300 million, up to 300 million investments loans have been also proposed, but not at 4%, but at a different rate. So another thing is the maintain adequate foreign currency reserves is another one, because you are aware that when there's an issue like this, obviously the apparel sector completely has come to standstill, and our foreign earnings are totally gone, and the service sector, tourism is not there. But still, then what happened? The government came in as a policy measure. They restricted certain things. They restricted imports, especially motor vehicles and non-essential items. And from People's Bank, I can tell you, and we were asked only to open LCs for certain things like importing of the medicine, pharmaceutical and things like that, and to extend credit facilities for petroleum and stuff like that, which is again important to control the foreign currency reserves depleting, because you are aware that foreign currency reserves have been around 7.4 billion in Sri Lanka. And with this, there were certain other measures that we took. Travel allowances also restricted up to $5,000 and suspension of purchase of Sri Lanka international sovereign bonds. And these are the measures the government took. In addition to that, there's a special deposit account introduced, Professor, for people who have money, especially either in Sri Lanka or foreign nationals or for Sri Lankans who are living abroad, to remit this money into the specific savings account, and where they can get about a little higher interest rate than the normal interest rate, which is very much attractive. The important thing here is the policy measures taken, because this is the first time I have seen a document signed by the Governor of Central Bank and the Secretary of Treasury. Both have signed this document, because there's an issue about the confidence building, because whether now this remittance for this account will be completely free from all the regulations, which is important. So there won't be any questions or anything will be asked. So that is another important measure that the government has taken, is very important. And Sri Lankan banks have never defaulted a single payment for international banks. And as a result, CBA, the central bank, also provided some US dollar liquidity for banking sector. It's about 280 million US dollars. So even People's Bank had commitments last week or the previous week. we have been able to meet all the commitments, whereas Bangladesh and Pakistan, I'm aware, Professor, that there are certain issues that they have defaulted certain payments, but in Sri Lanka, we have not defaulted that. Those are important measures that the government, responsible government, has taken so far to make sure that, although resilient, to make sure that the economy is, the confidence has been built up, and the business community. Tomorrow, if we are going to go to our, the officers, there won't be any issue. The banking sector is there to support you, but we need to understand that it's not only one-way process. Everybody will have to make sure we have to compromise a lot. As a regulator, as a government, as an employer, as an employee, everybody will have to get ready to compromise certain things. Then I'm sure that with these policy measures, the country can take it to the next level. I think within this given time, I thought that first, let me finish with that presentation, and I'll be very happy to take up whatever the questions that we have the next round of discussion.
Thank you very much, Sujiva, for that very interesting, insightful sharing. And as you very rightly said, this is the time we need to protect people. People first, economy next. So the measures that you have described hopefully would support people. And as you very rightly said, one keyword is compromising. And again, I would say compromising should not affect the commitment of people in order to collaboratively achieve the results. So the business leaders should carefully evaluate the given reliefs and then meaningfully use them in order to ensure that they are on the transformation. They are on the move from survival to success. So with that thought sharing, let me move to another veteran, Aravind Perera, with an illustrious banking career. Then he had moved over to manufacturing sector, and now mostly into strategic level decision making at corporate levels. So we can combine two aspects, people aspect and the product aspect. So Aravind, if you can give us a perspective about how to approach people and products and keeping the challenges of manufacturing expenses, the cost of the production and all the other necessary challenges involved, giving a people and product perspective. Over to you, Aravind. Aravind, I hope you are with us.
You should unmute your mic, sir. You have to unmute your mic, sir.
Sorry. Can you hear me, Professor? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm proud to be a PIMA graduate and to come here and then speak to you on this in a pandemic situation. I think we need to look at two things that happened in the past. Say we had 30 years of war in this country, during which there has been limited lockdown on certain areas, and there has been collateral damage. Coming to tsunami, we had a lot of collateral damage. We hope and pray that this pandemic will have a natural death, or there will be certain remedies brought up, and then we need to think more than survival and then go into success. So first we need to survive. I think we need to start from there. But of course, you need to make sure that success has to be kept very closely in mind, and future also has to be very closely, you have to keep it in mind. Otherwise, what happens is competition will come in and then you will be left behind. First thing that you need to work out is, when do you start your operations? Now, you have been a local company, you have your sales, you have your distribution, or maybe you are exporter. And then comes the production and finally the head office. I would say that we have first to come in should be the sales, and because all of us have carrying a, and we don't know exactly what the sales are going to be in the next few months to come. So there is an uncertainty. In such a situation, I think to run into production may not be the right way of looking at it. So we probably should be looking at sales distribution. But of course, this is for certain types of company, but there are certain other companies, this might not work. If you are into food and if you are into things like personal hygiene or personal protection devices and all that, then your sales and production has to start. Even before you start selling, you need to start. In time to come, the concept of head office also will have to survive, because I mean, we are all working from home and seems to be working, and whether we really need a head office also will be a matter for discussion. When should we start out for that? I mentioned earlier that there is this uncertainty of sales. You may be holding stocks, and this may be a great time to cut down on your stocks before you start your producing. When you have your production lines going, you obviously produce much more than what you sell. The usual production-based companies always do that. And then what happens is you have a gradual building up of stocks within you. Then what you really can do now is that, okay, let's look at the stocks. What do we have and what we don't have? If we believe that we have enough stocks to go for the next couple of months, then we should not be rushing into production, but we should be start selling first. And looking at where the demand is going, we can certainly start working towards production. Of course, if you're into exports, you really have to check whether your contracts are still holding firm. If your contracts are still holding firm, that obviously means that you can start producing immediately. There are certain other technical aspects about when to start production is how long you can keep your production plant without working. There are certain technical reasons for that. You have to keep it in proper condition. You have to have dry runs. You have to make sure that necessary looking after is done. So there's a certain amount of work that has to be done before you start production. Then comes, you have discussed about the sales and production. Then comes, are you looking for cash flows or you are looking for profitability? This is uncertain time. Probably this is not the time to look at the profitability. You should be looking at cash flows. Your survival, if you are to survival, it should be the cash flow that we should be looking at. In time to come, for success and continuing success, profitability has to be built in not so long future. Are we into capital expenditure right now? What are the plans that we had at the time coronavirus hit us? Did we have new projects? Have we started on working, or are they still on planning stages? Now there are certain products that have, due to coronavirus, have made it really necessary that we immediately start this project, and there are certain other projects we might want to delay it for the time being. Your capital, as Sujiva mentioned, we are talking about banks having problems in non-performing loans. I have been there for 31 years in banking, so I know. So the projects have to be relooked at. Each project, whether you are halfway through, otherwise each project has to be looked at with a new view, where we stand, where we are going to go in the next 3 to 6 months and then to the future, and then decide what we are going to do. Then, as Professor mentioned, the HR side of the business comes in. You need to work as a team. You can't have production and sales, and you can't have a completely different HR person or supplies person. It's a matter of working all together as one business unit so that we know where we are going. It is very, very essential. And then, of course, you need to have a genuine interest in your staff welfare. I'm in a company where there are 3 factories, probably about 1,000 people working, and about 60 showrooms and head office and all that, large number of people. So we need to be genuinely interested in their welfare. And there are certain guidelines put by the government. You really have to make sure that these guidelines are put in place. That is for survival. But for success, your team, I use the word team, I'm not talking about a staff. Your team should know that you're really genuinely interested in them, that you want to be retaining them rather than asking them to go. Today news, we saw a global communication giant, entertainment giant, asking 100,000 people to go home. Right? Here we are talking about, okay, we will stick together, work together, but you have to put your 100% and we will put our 100%, make sure that we will go in the correct path. Relationships matter with your buyers, your suppliers, your team, your shareholders, general public, and the government. Now, these relationships are, at a time like this, can be built up very strong. One example is the government. Now, the government is saying, look, friends, we really have to look after our foreign exchange situation, and there are certain limitations put on us on imports. We really have to believe what the government is doing is the right thing, and then we need to make sure that we stick to that. We as people who are into local industries, we'll have to make sure what cannot be imported has to be produced here and produced at the lowest cost, and we should not be making any attempt to make unwanted profits out of a situation where such situations can happen. So the relationship, we will have to tell them, look, we want to produce, but for us to produce, these are the requirements. Now, there are so many issues relating to production as well. Now, one is procuring our materials. Now, I'm into ceramics. I do import materials from Hungary, Scotland, UK, China, I mean, you name it, Italy, Spain. Most of the names that I'm mentioning are areas, countries who are suffering really bad. Italy, Spain, China, even UK. Now, at short term, probably will not be able to 100% procure the local materials to make sure that we get simple. It doesn't work that way. But however, it is now the time to attempt whether we can replace some of the imported materials with our own. Recently, I read on the web that Australia is presently exporting lithium to China in raw form. And of course, China produces batteries and send them back to Australia. I mean, this is a story that we have heard long time back. When we were sending raw rubber, we were talking about tires coming back. But it is happening even in Australia right now. Now, see, we need to look at situations like that and see where are the places that local manufacturers come in. We need the government, research institutions, universities must put together their heads together and work out and come and say, look, these opportunities are available. Companies that do not understand that they need to change may not survive. But those who do and practically involve themselves in the change will succeed. You probably have to look at manpower realignment as well. There are some industries which will find it very difficult to survive. These industries have to realign the way that you are doing things. Now, that is where again the government and corporates and schools and universities will have to come together. It involves from school to universities and what kind of graduates we produce, what kind of technical expertise that come out from technical colleges. Is it what we require not to survive, but for the future, which means success. So a lot of work to be done. You know, you're not only talking about automation. You're talking about real life intelligence automation that has to come in here. Now, we are definitely heading for a huge recession. There will be cut downs, scale downs. Government will support, as Sujeev mentioned. Social distancing. Now, there will be new ways of conducting business, obviously. Now, see, we have all our board meetings on Zoom or Teams. We never rush to another company and sit on a boardroom anymore. new way of conducting business. Now, sales can be and should be more on digital platforms. There will be certain items which cannot be done that way, but I believe that more on digital platform we should start selling. Then manufacturing has to start rethinking. Like, for example, are you producing a quite diversified set of products? Now, this new dimension of, in a situation like today, there are industries which are making a lot of money. Those who are manufacturing ventilators, those who are manufacturing the gloves, those who are manufacturing, I mean, if you are a group of companies, do we have such a company among us? These are things that we have to start thinking. Now, from the sales point of view, we should move from queues to home deliveries. If you can remember the first few days in front of all the supermarkets, the queues that we had, and now we never go there for more than 1.5 months. Home deliveries were quite okay for us to. Now, certain old practices will change with this. If we continue to go back after the COVID-19 is really resolved, and we start to do the same thing over and over again, then we are not learned something. To what extent you are automated? Now, I'm in an industry where there's a lot of equipment, and there is certain amount of handling of materials and certain amount of automation. Now, we probably have, we are little, we are thinking very, very closely how best we can keep our people separate one from other. We are marking places where people should stand, but of course people have to move along with the production process. But to see how we can distance people. Now, automation, robotics, use of artificial intelligence, these are things that we really have to come in. So there's a lot of work that we are talking about. Now, design and re-engineering in your own organization. Then both in your present production process, how it looks like, can it be re-engineered to look it differently? Your businesses has to be flexible in future. It can't be rigid. Production planning, it has to be based on real-time demand and supply. You can't, we have been very easily doing production and keeping them in stocks. There are certain industries that they will continue to do that, like the industry that I am in. But there are certain other industry will move from real-time demand supply into production planning. Information updates are going to be very, very important in the new era that's going to come. You need to review your processes and do it now. And remote operation, can you operate remotely? Then priorities. Some businesses, some new ideas will be on hold. But there are some new businesses that will flourish. These new businesses that will flourish are where you have less overheads, less people working, and more automated and use of robotics. Your employees also has to be cross-trained. Now, we do have a situation. We have a kiln, we have a press, and we have material processing, and we have specialists in all these areas. Now, there will be a need to cross-train. In a situation where 100 people are there, only 30 people are coming. Unless they are cross-trained, you will have issues. You will survive with some of these few months. But I'm talking about success in months to come. It has to be with a few flexible, well-trained, cross-trained individuals with brains who will run this business. Agility, flexibility, another word that we are talking about, agility. Not only in people, but also in operations, machinery, and materials handling, everything. So I'm a banker mostly, but I started talking about manufacturing, my limited experience. I hope there'll be questions, and then I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind, for that wonderful sharing. In fact, you raised very interesting challenges. One is basically to ensure the relationships and move towards the results, and that team dynamism in action. And also, you mentioned another very important point, a tip for exporters, not just a raw way of exporting, basically the value addition. I'm sure the creation of cleantech, the nanotechnology initiatives, technology has a tremendous potential to ensure we are not exporting the raw materials. We are exporting something which is of high value addition. Food for thought, and I think we need to work towards those. And I like the final point you mentioned. We need to have a workforce which needs to be upskilled, reskilled, and multi-skilled. You can't just go on with the basis where they can do only one thing. That era is gone. In the new normal, post-COVID-19 new normal, you need to have upskilled people, multi-skilled people, reskilled people. So you need to ensure that they are well geared to a diverse set of challenges. So with that wonderful insights, may I now move to Suranga Herat. Suranga, you represent multiple facets. You come from a small and medium scale enterprise background. And we know 52% of the contribution to the Sri Lankan economy comes from SMEs. So you represent that vital sector. And then you are into export markets. You are producing tea. And you recently introduced this very interesting concept called Prajava, community, involving people from the entire supply chain. So in order to have shared value, creating shared value. And you can put all of those wonderful concepts together and give us a perspective from a small and medium scale enterprise. Over to you, Suranga.
Thank you, Prof. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. I want to start off by thanking you for giving me this opportunity. And I echo the sentiments of Sujeeva and Arvind and Ravi, who's going to come next. I'm sure he's going to have the same day that we feel really proud to be back in our own uni. I graduated in 2006, so this is after 14 years. A lot has changed since then. And I want to assure all of the listeners that it's not just the top that looks smart. We have been asked to wear a proper suit, so it's not pajama bottoms. We're properly clad. Just wanted to tell everyone that. I think I've got a little bit of things to add to what Sujeeva and Aravind said about government policy and banking, but I'll leave that to the end and maybe for questions. But I think where I come from, you're right. We represent the important 52% of SMEs, and I have the fortune, if I may call it, of having businesses in Sri Lanka, in US and UK. And the background of marketing our product in over 50 countries through very close associations and partnerships. So I probably bring into the table a little bit of a comparison as to how Sri Lanka is faring against the rest of the world in terms of prepping against COVID, or basically facing COVID, and what things we can learn from the rest of the world. Before that, I think I don't want to be the one who's talking doom and gloom, but there is no secret. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is probably the most uncertain period that we have ever faced in our lifetime. No expert, whether in politics or health or sciences, or for that matter, any field has been able to tell us as to what it is going to pan out to in terms of health or economy or lifestyles, at least in the next 12 to 18 months with reasonable confidence. So that leaves us in a very, very peculiar position. This viral is not as deadly as some of the previous ones in terms of the death rate, but it is deadly in terms of how it spreads and how it affects mobility of people. So we're really constrained to our homes, and large part of the population around the world is facing the same issue. I have a strong feeling that there is not going to be an easy solution to this, because I also have some points which I would mention as we go on to prove that I don't think we have a really good enough collaborated effort to get us into that vaccine or cure solution anytime soon. So I'm thinking, as a business, as an individual, as countries, as industries, our biggest problem is, are we doing enough scenario planning to understand how we should, play this game during COVID, and then how best should we prepare for a post-COVID new normal world? I'm not going to spell out all of the facets that appear to be clear, because I think the macro picture is clear to everyone, because I've spent like the last 6 weeks listening to tons of webinars, and I'm sure a lot of people have done that over the last 6 weeks. So let's leave the macro picture, because assuming a lot of people are clear with that, let's get into as you very correctly started off, Prof. What actions and what are our learnings and what are our applications. I think a lot of people who are joining this webinar wants to hear some of the things that we have been doing. And of course, I would love to talk about a transformation to success, an easier route, but I'm going to tell you at the very beginning, I don't have a formula, and I don't think some of the things I'm going to talk might not even relate to some people. But I'm going to talk about an approach, a process, a framework, and the scenarios that we are seeing and the scenarios that we're kind of playing in our own organization, which might probably be useful in your understanding of the COVID and post-COVID the worlds. So I'll start off with a little comment. We the panelists exchanged a couple of days back or yesterday. I think we had an initial chat about how some of the corporates have started off, which some of us believe with the wrong footing. Cutting off people, cutting salaries, and taking really hard measures. I also was very nervous at the very beginning, when people started asking us, what do you think about, it was not only in Sri Lanka, but globally, what do you think of these cuts and chops, and, why would people do that? I think what we did as a team was really analyze all of these scenarios, what countries did, what companies did, and what individuals did. I think all of these people did, whatever cut they did. I love to believe that majority of these cuts came from heavy heart. I've listened to industry experts in Sri Lanka, and I saw, in their eyes the gravity of those decisions. And I think the biggest, message there is, like we did in our organization, we started reaching out to companies. We started listening to these stories, but we did that with a learning mentality. When someone said we're going to cut tier 1 salaries by 30-40%. Some people, extended it to tier 2, tier 3 executives. But in most cases, everyone, be it in Sri Lanka or elsewhere, I've been talking to quite a lot of countries in the region as well, I think have tried their level best to preserve earnings of the bottom level. So having looked at those messages, that letter alone won't spell out the real picture of those industries and those companies. Those letters are not showing us their balance sheets. Those letters are not showing us where they stand in terms of industry and how they're reading the new normal world that they might be stepping into. I think that's the clear thing. So we started really analyzing as to why certain industries behaved in a certain way and why certain others, kind of handled things differently. But it's very, very early days. We can't arrive at judgments. We can only learn from these things, and the learning will be really high quality if we start questioning some of these things and, dive deep into those companies and, understand why they did certain things the way they did. Countries, the same scenario. We've started criticizing different countries for different approaches, but I don't think we can put all of us in the same scale and judge them, at this point, because, these countries have different plans. As you correctly said, this is World War III. World War III is happening. Obviously, we will, have to have different scenario planning as countries and companies, and, have different approaches in balancing health, life, and, the economics. So the key question to me is, are we as a country, as governments, as private sector, as banks, are we doing enough scenario planning to understand that we need to be proactive in this game, and we need to really have an approach that builds in, various scenarios. So in my organization, it's scenario planning every day, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So basically, what I'm encouraging people to do is read through stimulus packages. One of the things that fascinated me the last, nothing fascinates me, right now, to be really honest, is just seeing people's faces in the morning when we have our daily online huddle. Yes, that's like the only positive thing in our, business lives these days. But, before lockdowns began, some countries like US, UK released their stimulus packages. And because we do have business in these countries, we had access to these packages and we kind of went into detail. And I was really puzzled, second week of March, UK coming out with, their stimulus, and a week later, US got their signed off. And while, I'm not trying to make a direct comparison here, I'm trying to read through that stimulus package to understand how these countries, from US to UK to France to Japan, to even to India, is reading through this crisis and prepping the people and businesses to get ready for this unknown situation. It's not just enough acknowledging that this is uncertain. How do we really work together as governments and banks and corporates and individuals and communities to battle through it? I can go into detail of these stimulus packages if anyone is interested. Again, not to make comparisons, but what I read in summary when I saw all of these, country stimulus packages is a lot of fear is built in it, because some of them are too good to be true. What my company has access to in the US and the UK gives me comfort that my overhead bill will be largely met by the government for at least 3 months. Why would US government do that? Why would UK government do that? So I was trying to understand as to what they're reading. And again, repeating the fact that I'm not trying to bring the doom and the gloom, but I'm seeing a bigger, massive challenge that some of us are not reading from Sri Lanka. And that's really crucial. I'll get into that in detail if there is questions, if you want me to, but again, not to compare countries, because we are, we should have our own unique approach, and we've kind of, handled our first phase remarkably well. I think the second phase is going to be much, much more harder. And some of the stimulus measures, I think that has been put out will be next to nothing in practice when businesses get on, to work in the next couple of months. And that's a fact. And I can really go into detail, and we can have a chat with the two expert bankers, because I've been on the opposing side all my life, especially with Aravind as well, MD of a bank that I work with formally. And, we've had this debate in the past as well. So we kind of can get into a debate, which will help probably, some of the listeners, and again, Sujiva. So I'll spend a few minutes on, our response and how we've kind of, read this whole thing. So as I said, Prof, you gave a fantastic introduction as to the Prajal concept that we are built upon. I think you were part of our International Distributor Conference, a very important part of the International Distributor Conference that happened just a week before the shutdowns began. And we managed to get 24 countries to come into Sri Lanka just a week before the lockdowns began. So, in a way, we consider ourselves lucky because we, got that international forum done. And we launched our Prajava concept then. We launched our creating shared value concept. And we, kind of opened up the transparent model in which our value chain operates and in which our business operates. Few points there, because I think right now, as a business, I'm trying to be a CEO, really walk the talk in trying to become a servant leader. And I heard coincidentally that you mentioned, Prof, in one of your daily video talks or weekly video talks, the importance of servant leadership in this kind of scenario. I don't think it's ever, it's been more important ever in human history. It's right now how leaders have to really become servants in leading through this crisis. And I think that's clearly what we're trying our level best to do. And we work on a creating shared value platform, as you said. So we embarked on this journey in 2010 when we shut down a fairly large business of ours. We killed a successful business to build something unique, a unique sourcing model and a unique way of running the business. I don't have the time to describe the full mechanics of it, but I'll tell you a few things that I think I have found useful in those in the way we run the business, and some of the concepts and some of the frameworks we use in facing for uncertainties. So one of the things is everyone is talking about supply chain de-risking. And some people take this message very wrong. As Aravind also said, you got to really be understanding where you stand against these uncertainties and, be very practical. Because I don't think that the message to us or the world is that someone, I've heard people saying global village concept is gone. I'm here today to argue that the global village is going to turn to a global family. And I'll tell you why. In our case, we are a small business of about $20 million out of Sri Lanka. We are dependent on at least about a good 25 countries to keep our operation running. But we are largely dependent on the beautiful Sri Lankan organic agriculture. That spreads from the hill country of Sri Lanka to the most dry zone in Sri Lanka. And everything we do is organic. So people are talking about the importance of growing and importance of agriculture and the opportunity Sri Lanka agriculture has, not only for Sri Lanka, for international as well. So we've done that for the last 10 years. Nothing new for us. And also we are seeing how resilient the Sri Lankan organic agriculture sector is in comparison to the conventional sector, not only in terms of droughts and other climatic challenges, but even in terms of, challenges like this, COVID sort of uncertainties. So we have about 3,000 small organic farmers who are dependent on English tea shop to a large extent. And we encourage them, to go to the market directly, and most of them do that. Yeah. So we our supply chain is complex as it can get. And we love the fact that we are, largely dependent on Sri Lankan agriculture. But I don't think there is ever going to be a situation where going to be 100% Sri Lankan organic agriculture. The other 25 countries that I work with is going to be equally important, right? It's not going to be possible, practical for us to replace globally established supply chains. It's not going to happen in the short term. But Sri Lanka has an opportunity. Sri Lanka has a terrible balance in terms of manufacturing and services, and that, I think, runs decades back. We need to really step up manufacturing. But how do we really do that? It doesn't mean that we have to stop everything we import and manufacture everything that we consume. We need to step up our industrial manufacture. We need to step up our agriculture, but it has to be a carefully thought out process. What we couldn't achieve in 70 years, I don't think if anyone is thinking we are forced into a solution in weeks and months and we're going to come out as winners, that's wrong, because that's not going to work. I think your supply chains has to be de-risked in terms of your involvement. So that is what I'm getting at. Creating shared value framework that we establish means that we carry the burden of the supply chain. We go to the extent of solving problems for the organic farmers. We've invested in them and we have long-term contracts with them. And we kind of refine and narrow down and kind of cut down our supply. So I might go against the conventional wisdom which suggests you have to have a backup to a backup to a backup of supply. I don't think these backups are, backups work practically. I think it's great for theory. I think what companies found today was companies who had great contingency plans in their systems didn't account for the fact that if a part of the ecosystem fails, how do you respond then? Because it's not just one supplier who goes out of business, an entire gamut of things is not there. The only way to recover from that is your deep involvement with those supply chains, and that's what we had done, and that is why we probably are a little bit comfortable. I don't want to even use the word comfortable. I don't think any of us are comfortable, but I think in a comparison, I'm actually happy that we are looking after those suppliers and we're kind of, promising them things that some people can't promise. Turning back to employees, as Aravind said, that's your core. And, I'm sure, Prof, because we've had this conversation many a times. We run on 100% open book management, environment, and we run something called the deep game. So we started playing or working, in our organization, like playing a sport years back. So 6 years, our people are used to our financials, our balance sheets. It's all P&L games, balance sheet games, cash flow games for the last 6 years. Nothing is like conventional work for us. So we our contingency planning around that was converting in 2014. The vision that we, wanted to realize was to convert all of our people into business people. And then the culmination of that happened in front of your presence last month when we had the distributor conference, when we went with our employee share option plan, converting a large number of our employees as shareholders. But that's just the icing on the cake. The real, I think the strength comes from the fact that our people have been reading and understanding and analyzing business better. And it's so much better when you are running scenarios in an uncertain world, right? You don't know what scenarios to adapt in your workings. Every day we revise our scenarios. Today, a little while ago before this call, we discussed some of the other, changes, some of the changes that had happened in few markets of ours, which we are trying to build onto our plans. So a lot of scenario plan happened from the 14th of March till now through our daily video calls with the core teams. And it was only possible and it was only made easier because our people understand business. Our people read business the way any business leader would read business. When you work on the balance sheet and the financials and cash flow with a large team who can read and understand that the power of that is so, so valuable. So I'm not saying we are probably, in a comfortable situation. I'm saying I've at least covered one uncertainty. While what is happening in the world is very unclear and, very, very risky, I'm at least comfortable that we are stepping into that uncertain world with a group of people whom I know are really purposeful, passionate, and are business-minded. And that gives us a lot of strength in facing the uncertainties. Two more concepts before I, wind up the opening remarks. Prajava, as you mentioned. Prajava is the Sri Lankan word for community. I know a couple of foreigners are listening in. When we spoke about Prajava in front of international audience, everyone was quite surprised as to why English T-Shop is building on the Sri Lankan Sinhalese word and trying to take it international, like some of those Scandinavian, lifestyle concepts that went viral. In very short, Prajava, I think, is the way Sri Lankans get together in crisis. That's about it. I don't think we get together that well in not crisis situations or better situations. We are brilliant in crisis. We brilliantly handle crisis. Our honesty, transparency, helping each other, carrying each other goes to a different league when we are in crisis. And even COVID, I think majority of the population, the way they are responding is helping the government's ambition of, keeping things under control. Remarkable. But what we wanted to tell the world is, this Prajava concept is how we should be, running our businesses and how we should be running our households. And that honesty, transparency, and caring for each other, that attitude should come in everything we do. And that is the only way we are going to beat this crisis. And the last point I want to make at the opening remark is, coming back to that point about global connectivity. Leaders started talking about walls and barriers, and it went crazy, berserker with COVID, because right now the discussion is blaming each other. Blame everyone you come across, whether it's countries, companies, or whatever. I'm saying not even a simple measure like a lockdown will work unless there is global consensus, right? We need to have a globally simulated or a globally synchronized approach. There is a theory, might just be just a theory, that for a lockdown, the virus can be taken off the face of the earth if the entire world goes into a synchronized lockdown. At least on theory, it sounds right. But that may be, something extreme. But our search for vaccine, our search for cure, I'm saying it will not happen for the next 12 to 18 months unless there is global consensus. And, you simply need global solidarity and a universally shared dedication in that search. In a similar fashion, the post-COVID world, which we are trying to build, scenarios for, or the COVID world we are trying to build scenarios for, is not as easy as it seems to be. It's unfortunately not as easy as shifting from a brick and mortar store to a more digital front end. Digital front end is needed. Digital back end is needed. Even a small and medium enterprise today will not be able to operate, as Aravind said, if you're not building in those capabilities. And we are able to run our offices for the last, 6 weeks from home, because we were, kind of ready, and we kind of played that game also as part of our contingency planning. So while production is suffering, we run a very small skeleton operation since the 7th of April because the curfews got extended. Initially, our theory was until curfew is lifted, we will not start production. But after a while, we realized that for the sake of foreign exchange and also for our own survival, because it's survival first, and then I'm going to talk about success if I'm given opportunity later on, the transformation. I think you need to really do as much as you can, by building that technology. But more so, I think it's very important to have that global mindset, continuing on to your, solutions. And I would think the legacy of COVID-19, I would love to think the legacy of COVID-19 might very well be a new spirit of collaboration, connectedness, and community, which will lead to, a lot of things like success in business, economies, and lives. And with that, I'll end the first opening, part, and then take questions as we go on. Prof, thank you.
Thank you, Suranga. I think lots of insightful information. It reminds me of what Bill George said, the VUCA world, volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now we are moving into VUCA 2.0 with vision, understanding, confidence, and agility. That's what we need. In fact, that's a new interpretation of the global world that we have to survive and to succeed. In fact, some argue that we need to be more local in disconnecting with the globe. I don't think it will be a reality, because this is straight from an exporter where without the connection we can't survive. By Perhaps it's a redefining of the global supply chain with more emphasis on local production. Perhaps if I'm to use the word export-oriented local manufacturing, which has been grossly neglected. So we got to revitalize export-oriented local manufacturing, and that will ensure that we have a new way of looking at local world where global-local harmony still remains to be seen in a more robust manner, but with more emphasis on local manufacturing. So with that, it's time to turn to Ravi. I think Ravi has a small technical challenge to get connected. So till that is sorted out, may I go back to Sujiva? Sujiva, I hope you are with us. Sujiva, you can unmute your mic.
Yes.
There are a couple of questions based on your initial thought sharing. This one is all about clarity and consistency of the government communication. And perhaps you can add a little value in terms of clarifying some of the doubts that people are having. Mr. Sujiva, can you please brief on working capital facility? Support, if I have purchased my stocks on credit basis, I mean purchase have done on 1 month post-dated checks, but unfortunately due to this COVID pandemic, I couldn't sell all the purchases and consider. So basically, what the participant needs to know is that I need to know how I will get the proposed working capital loan. A little bit of practical assistance in someone who is in trouble.
Yeah, Prof. What we need to understand here is now working capital, what we have learned from our books may be a little different from what we are going to apply here, or it could be vice versa. Because now working capital generally consider as you have your current assets and you have your current liabilities, and your difference is considered to be working capital according to the textbook. But here what happens is the government has come out with a working capital facility, but you need to assess your exact requirement of working capital. Let us say you have your receivables, and without collecting your receivables, if you run to the bank and say, hey, I need this money, and they will obviously ask, look here, why aren't you collecting this your receivables? Unless you can justify, reasonably say that, look here, I can't collect a single cent. But banker will not probably believe what you say. If instead, if you say, look here, yes, I have got X amount of my receivables, but I may be able to collect only 20% rather than 100% or 75%. I can only collect 20%. As a result, I will have a the working capital issue. Then banker will understand. So therefore, you need to be very truthful about how you compute your working capital, especially for this particular, the request, and then go and meet the banker. And there are a few other things I would like to tell, the participants. The central bank first came out with the working capital requirement for the entire the sectors, but then later, they have changed it through 2 documents. Now, the latest document, for your information, I can tell you, I have here right in front of me. It says only this working capital will be eligible only micro, small and medium-sized businesses, including manufacturing, services, agriculture, construction, self-employment business and individuals, and the business in the sectors of tourism, exports and related logistics suppliers are eligible for the facility. So you need to understand that if you go by the previous one, please relook at the latest, the announcement and look at. Again, the previous one, there was another one to say that if you are dealing with few bankers, you can go to all the bankers and ask for working capital facility. But now the latest one dated 20th April, it says one borrower, or rather within bracket business, is eligible for only one loan. So that part I think you need to understand. Another important thing here is simply because that the government is going to give you at the rate of 4% does not mean that you can simply borrow that and then go ahead with your whatever you do. Say for instance, if you are going to, here there's another important thing. the businesses that are pivotal in protecting employment and production. Please make a note of that. Pivotal in protecting employment and production. So then you can't simply lay off your staff. So that is guaranteed. So therefore, need to understand that if you have plans because of the fact that you are not going to revive your business for next 5-6 months, if you are going to lay off your staff, then this is not going to work out. Please understand. And there are certain limitations, there are certain priorities given. If your working capital is, say, whatever you ask is below 10 million, then first priority will be given. And between 10 and 25 million, the next priority. And if your working capital requirement is about 25 million, then that will be the third priority. So you need to look at and see what's the amount that you are going to ask for. Another thing is, obviously the banker simply can't lend this money unless you have a collateral. So that collateral is absolutely important. Some people feel that collateral means just always a fixed asset that you have to keep. No, that all depend on the relationship that you have been having with your bank. That is very important. Say for instance, if you have been an NPL customer, you have defaulted, your loan payments and things like that, your banker will look at you differently. So then obviously they will ask more and more, the collateral. Instead, if you have been an excellent customer, your payments have been prompt, and they might even, the banker might say, look here, you simply give us your cash flow. Cash flow also could be a collateral, or could be converted that into an asset. So those are important things that I would like to take you through about working capital requirement. But the working capital, please make sure that no capital assets, only the current assets. And having your receivables and other assets, if you say, look here, I can't collect those, but you have to justify. So another thing is, according to as of today, on or before 30th of April this month, you need to go to a bank and apply. Of course, because of the curfew, you may not be able to do it practical, but I know bankers have given you facility either through SMS, your WhatsApp, or any other media, or email. You can simply inform the bank about your requirement. So then they will register. Again, you need to understand that it is not the bank who is going to give you this money. It's the central bank who is going to give this money to bank, and in turn bank is going to give it to you. So therefore, there's a process. There's a registration that you have to do. It's not only in the bank level, but even at the central bank, regional, rural development level. So therefore, there's a process. Please make sure you rush to bank as soon as possible. Then according to the chronology, according to the order in which that they have received, they will, I'm sure that they will line it up and then get these funds from central bank. Again, as customers feel that you can, look here, you can get this facility by end of April. No, it will take little more time. So it will take, because of the formalities. So please make sure you do it as soon as possible. Be fruitful, faithful, honest, and transparent with all the workings. Then banker will be able to finalize and agree your working capital as soon as possible, and then in return banker will submit those requirements to central bank for them to process, and they will issue you a reference number. And then with that reference number, the banker will give you the reference number, and with that, I'm sure that you will be able to finalize your working capital requirement. Prof, I hope that I have explained about the working capital process.
I believe Prof is not, he is not online.
Disconnected?
So, I'm not sure. So I think let me, as a banker, say something about what Sujiva said. This number one is, this is not the first time the banks have come out with various schemes to help out the, he's online, yeah.
Yes, extremely sorry for this. Now this is a real hands-on demonstration of uncertainty that we are facing.
Prof,
So the
I
societal
explained.
uncertainty was 50%.
Prof, I explained the whole thing about the working capital requirement and how to do and what to do and when to do and all that. I believe that, the
Fantastic,
participants would have got some idea. Right. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Thank you. May I move to the next question? Then we have, okay. I think someone has commented, thank you very much for the wonderful explanation, Mrs. Sujiva. So that shows that there's a happy recipient or the happy participant. Okay. Can I go to the remaining few questions? Any other questions? Okay. Can I see whether Mr. Ravi Edrisinger is connected now? Now our fourth resource person, Mr. Ravi Edrisinger. If not, I can turn to Mr. Aravind for the second time. Aravind, if you can add something more to that. I think you mentioned more about the need to have resilience with regard to ensuring the team is having the solidarity and the team is approaching the real challenges in a more flexible manner, and they are motivated enough to survival that is needed in order to ensure success.
Yeah.
So, Aravind, if you can add a little more light into it.
Yeah. See, I can remember the short period that I was, not a short period, the long period that I was at Sampath Bank. We had a certain issue, which was a gold price, right? And gold prices, again, we had nothing to do with. All of a sudden, the gold prices started coming down unexpectedly, and the whole banking sector was, those who were exposed to gold were having serious issues. So at that time, the real game plan was, we need to get out from gold as soon as possible and move into other SME and other loans, because we had quite a significant percentage of our loan portfolio in one single product, which was really, when I look back, I was the MD at that time, but when I look back, somewhat frightening right now when I look at it. But then it was a teamwork where we said, I spoke to all my staff and said, look, we need to get out from here. So on one hand, people were not coming to redeem their gold, and we were selling at a loss, and then we were providing and putting provisions into our profit and loss account on account of that. At the same time, there was a need, whatever that money that is coming on has to be moved into different areas. It has to be done then and there, not 3 months later or 6 months later. So the challenge was, number one, the whole country was having a problem relating to this. So where is the new customers coming from? So it was really the branch network that came in. And number two was, the gold loans were at very high interest rate. Normal SME loans were at a much lower interest. So it was really teamwork, day-to-day monitoring, talking to people and getting together and discussing. You know, it's not the managing director himself running the business, but ideas coming from everybody within the network and working out and walking from customer to customer and request them to come and bank with us, and then to make sure that they borrow from us, so that whatever the money that gets released from the gold loans will going into. I think we have successfully within a year itself that we have moved out. So the question is, you have to gel. You know, you need two hands to clap. In this situation, I had probably how many? Probably about 3,500 people to clap with me. So it was a joint effort from everybody working together. We knew what we were looking for. Not so many things, just one thing. move away from gold, get into something, making sure that you don't have to provide for bad debts when you bring the new customers. Very straightforward targets. Everybody knew what was expected, and then we did that. So it's leading a team that will have their priorities centered around a few identified formula, making sure that it works. So that's the way to go. And as Suranga said, we Sri Lankans have a way of getting together. Prajava is the word that he used. So we need to make sure that it works this time as well. Sri Lankan banks also will have a problem because leading to this, we had the East attack, and even before that, if anybody is looking at the ratios, the non-performing loans have been increasing right throughout probably a couple of years, slowly but steadily going up. And East attack was a bad point, and this is going to be a real critical situation. So banks will have to be understanding, central bank will have to guide them and then assist them at a time like this. And then customers and banks, as Sujiva quite rightly said, you need to tell your doctor what's wrong with you. Same with COVID-19 thing. You can't hide your sickness. Likewise, your bank has to be told the truth. If you tell the truth, bank will come up with a solution, and then that will be good for you. So the banks and customers, manufacturing or service or anybody has to be very closely working with each other. It's going to strain at times their relationships, but end of the day, you have to strike a balance between what is good for both parties. It's not easy, but I think it can be done.
Thank you, Arvind. In fact, I'm trying my best to get Mr. Ravi Edirisinghe, being one of the sought after financial resource persons in the MBA program and also a dynamic CEO of the country. And my question to Ravi is how to be brilliant on basics with regard to prudent financial management. And I think Densil is trying to get him connected through the phone and put him into the speakerphone. Densil, are we ready? Can we have Densil unmuted? Densil, can you hear me? So till Densil gets Mr. Ravi Edirisinghe. Densil, are you ready?
Densil appears to be disconnected.
Yes. No, we are trying to get him in from a different channel. Till then, there's another interesting question perhaps Sujiv and Arvind could tackle. They are printing a lot of money locally. What are the pros and cons of this initiative, printing money locally?
Simple answer is inflation.
Perhaps Sujiv and Arvind both can give a brief
but anyway,
answer.
here, there are different schools of thought. Now some people say no, print more money. So even the major economies, I think they keep on printing money. But end of the day, according to what we have learned in theory, the textbooks, it will definitely lead to inflation. But there are times that you need to do it as a responsible government. They do it. So that it will be very hard to stop. Of course, the inflation and the money supply and a few things need to be kept in mind. So simple answer, I don't think that there are this can be relevant.
The economy must respond. The economy must respond. Production and services has to expand. The growth has to be seen in these areas as well. If that happens, Sujiva, I believe there'll be a little bit of respite despite being which way the country being a country printing money.
Okay, thank you. So may I turn to Suranga? Suranga, so let me ask, given the situation moving beyond doom and gloom, Suranga, are you with me?
Yes, Prof. I can hear you well.
Yes.
Hope people can hear me.
Three key recommendations for SMEs. In order to survival to success, transformation.
I'm a little bad in numbers because I've delegated the numbers task to my team, so I might end up giving you about 5 or 6.
Yes, top 3.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll try to probably consolidate them. One of the things I want to talk about is, government policy and banking. I know we've got experts talking about that, but I want to bring in a little bit of international perspective because, again, I'm saying nothing is comparable at this, moment. So this is not for comparing. This is for your scenario building. Because what these participants and our listeners want to know from us is as to what they should be doing, but there is no simple answer. So I'm trying to build the logic of the importance of seeing through scenarios and validating your businesses for today and tomorrow, right? So yes, it's great that we've seen some of the moratoriums and reduction in interest and in our own capacities because we're not a country who's rich with reserves and stuff like that. But I'll give you an example from the US. Within I think the second week of March we get this from the UK to be that probably is a more easy example. We get a call from the bank, in fact, and then the bank asks us, we've done we've got this package in our hands, and we are looking at a fairly gloomy 2020-2021. And I was in a struggle because we were to send our management accounts to the bank during that period. And obviously we've made a huge exchange provision in lieu of the pound's rapid devaluation against the dollar. And then at a time like that, they called me, they said, we're not looking at the now. The situation is going to be bad. And they gave me, a series of options saying that, obviously there is a direct government grant which will look after your people's payroll, subject to a maximum of 80% of payroll. And there was obviously a maximum limit, which was quite substantial in our case. And then a few other things, for self-employed people, government paying, their pre-tax income based on last 3 years pre-tax income average for several months. And, we immediately jumped on a couple of them, obviously. But we didn't want to furlough our people because we work on a very different, people logic as long as possible. And I don't know whether, I'm talking today I've written to all our suppliers, our employees, our customers, and saying that we will be the last company who want to reduce employee pay and benefits. But again, it's not nothing's guaranteed. So we've given certain conditions, saying in 3 months' time, if the scenario planning that we run changes, we might have to get into more drastic measures. So what I saw there was the government obviously pumped money to the banks. The banks are, as Sujiva said and Aravinda said, I don't think the banks have balance sheets that are rich enough, for them to plow money to the economy or to the businesses. That's going to be out because, as I said, they've been going through this several times the last couple of years, including after Easter Sunday, completely taking the onus on a couple of industries fully, including tourism. So what I saw from US, UK, and a few other countries was an immediate jump, an immediate assistance in offering us stimulus. For example, in the US, 3 months of payroll is completely paid if your revenue is lost. You even get that money in advance because the moment you lodge the application, there are 2 caveats to it. There are 2 conditions to it. You get your money in advance as a loan on the first week of April or second week of April after you send in the applications. The 2 conditions are you got to report a revenue loss for the quarter ending 30th June, right? You get the money in advance, but it comes as a loan. You got to report a loss in revenue. So they don't say how much. You should say that you should prove that there is a revenue loss due to COVID. The second one is, as Sujiv also mentioned, one of the conditions that we also have in our place in Sri Lanka is that there should not be a reduction in payroll until 30th June. So we've kind of sent in those applications, and also there's another fascinating, facility, which again is important from a Sri Lankan context, which says that any loss that you make in the US this year, 80% of that loss can be claimed in cash if you, against the corporate taxes you paid for 6 years back from 2014. So we've been a company paying, taxes all 6 years. So I have at least one confidence. The one thing certain for our business in the US is we're going to make a loss this year. That's certain. Amidst the uncertainties. And I'm fairly confident of recouping 80% of that loss to, get close to the break-even point. Why I mention this is not to put ourselves down. Please don't get me wrong, because whenever I bring global examples, it happens to be from US and UK and for no other reasons because we got business there. And obviously there is a lot of other partners of ours who work globally, but I can only talk about what we go through, and these are first-hand information. These are claims that I've lodged, and these are monies that I got.
Suranka,
So
I
what
mentioned
is
about 3 recommendations. Now I also lost my track how many recommendations were given so far.
No, I'm still looking at the government policy and banking. That's one recommendation. I'll give you 2 recommendations for the private sector. At the end, I'll try to wind up soon. So basically, what I'm seeing is these governments are looking into this scenario in a different way. Because even though their health lockdowns are not very serious, their financial offerings and packages given to companies show just one thing: the gravity of the problem. And this gravity of the problem cannot be battered on or cannot be handled by companies on their own. The governments and banks need to work together with the companies to build stimulus. You can't expect the companies to battle this on their own. So what my point about government and banking is that we need to be working more cleverly when come to the second phase in offering moratorium. I think it needs to be more than the moratoriums. Very quick couple of suggestions for the people who ask for 3 suggestions. One is, don't get carried away with what you're seeing now in this context. Some of these things might change. If you believe that home delivery is a great opportunity and a digital front end is a great opportunity, definitely sure we're seeing that across the world there is growth in digital business around the world. But don't forget the fact that everyone is getting into that domain and this is going to be more and more competitive. And unless you have a different USP and a niche that you're targeting, you're going to struggle. If you're going to do the same thing that the global giants like Amazon.coms and Walmarts and even in our own context, some of the big supermarkets might get into big time online delivery. So check your position before you invest money and jump on the bandwagon, because if you're doing it as a stopgap measure, that's fine. But if you're building businesses out of it, please reconsider as to whether these business opportunities will survive post-COVID. Because COVID is one phase, you're very well okay to do that, but post-COVID you need to be continuing that. And another recommendation is checking yourself not only in terms of the export manufacturing opportunities, as Professor mentioned. I think we need to step up for agriculture, step up for manufacturing, true. But we need to only do what we can. We need to focus. There again, the government has a massive role to play. We need to focus on agriculture and manufacturing that we can end up exporting. I've been preaching Sri Lankans, saying that Sri Lankan organic agriculture has massive potential outside of Sri Lanka. But if you look at the current position of Sri Lankan organic agriculture, it's pathetic. It's absolutely low. But again, don't jump into this just because you see the current opportunity around demand, because these things can change. Because the demand that you see now, please do assess in a COVID and a post-COVID new normal life. And this is what I want to go to as my last recommendation: scenario planning. It's all about understanding what is happening around you in the world, in corporates, in various facets. Building those scenarios into your businesses and your future, aspirations and your transformations for your own business. If you're continuing a business, don't just chuck it because it might, very well bounce back. But, see whether you'll have the same scale, same opportunity. The biggest thing that you should do as companies, as individuals, is a lot of scenario planning, learning through all the messages that you're reading from, all of us and from around the world, and building, arguments to back your business for today and tomorrow. Thanks.
I think the professor got disconnected. Maybe Mr. Aravinda can carry on the session with some questions. There are questions on the chat. You can answer them.
Yeah.
Professor is back. Professor is back.
Am I clear enough to the panelists?
Yes.
Yes. Japanese companies are pulling out of China. So with same with Google and few other companies, some American companies are also pulling out of China. So will that be an opportunity to Sri Lanka to have that initiative of made in Sri Lanka or serve from Sri Lanka? So may I pose that question to all three panelists? The companies pulling out of China, will that be an opportunity for Sri Lanka? Sujiva, Aravind, and Suranga, all three. A brief answer.
Aravind, the first you can start because you are into manufacturing, Aravind.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You need to look at the product or service that they are getting from China. Depends on that. There will be definitely certain items that will provide where we have competitive advantages. So we need to look at them and then see what we can do. But there will be other countries which will have better competitive advantages vis-a-vis the products and services that are being provided. So you need to look at it and then see it. But of course, you have to look at it very, very aggressively. Somebody should start looking at it now. What is being provided by China? Can we do it? What are the competitive advantages that we have?
Okay, thank you. From Sujiva, a brief answer?
Yeah, I believe that this will be an excellent opportunity, as we going forward, because capital will certainly look for countries that are less battered, because obviously Western economies are badly battered according to my knowledge, and like Sri Lanka is less suffered. So therefore, I believe that this will be the ideal opportunity if we really pitch it properly. And also, since we are an island nation, I'm sure that also there are certain between certain countries. As a result, I believe Sri Lanka will have a greatest opportunity, and we need to make sure that we must make it positive and then move forward. And I'm sure that emotional and economic war against, especially against China, certainly it could be expected one of these days. So Sri Lanka will be at a very, very advantageous position, Prof. This is what I feel.
Okay, thank you. Suranga, what's your view on that? Suranga, you are mute.
Slightly different, Prof, because yeah, you can hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I agree with Sujiv and Aravind, totally. But I think my, argument is that Sri Lanka should work on its own merits, because that has been the case right throughout. We've got some great capabilities, great assets, great agriculture, great manufacturing, possibilities. China, going out, or people moving out of China might also add to those capabilities, because you might probably be able to match. But more than that, I think we need to take stock of our capabilities and skills. And as Aravind mentioned, the reskilling and upskilling and all those being given, there is obviously the possibility that we can build these capabilities as we go on. But I stand, very strong on the fact that Sri Lankans are already capable in building some really great manufacturing enterprises for both agriculture and industrial. We've already done that, in our own ways, big and small businesses. I think a lot of people need to follow and build that export mentality, that foreign exchange earning mentality into their businesses, and that will drive their businesses in a real global direction.
Okay, so I think time has gone by. In fact, we didn't realize how fast the time has gone, but still there are very interesting questions. Perhaps I can wind up with this one. It will be interesting. How do you define new normal for Sri Lanka? The post-COVID-19 new normal for Sri Lanka. How do you describe, define, or give details? A brief answer from all three panelists, starting, perhaps this time we'll start from Suranga. How do you define new normal for Sri Lanka?
I think new normal is what we create it to be, because I'm a strong advocate that we need to be building the world that we want to live in. It's not going to be a given. We got to be working towards this. And one of the points I wanted to make when I mentioned US and UK was the fact that we got to be building up on our honest and open approach for businesses. Sri Lanka lacks that, because that only comes in crisis. We need to incentivize honesty and openness. Why I mentioned examples from US and UK, you would have realized that all these stimulus are only available if you play by the book, if you're open book, and if you pay your taxes, and if you provide employment. And if you run businesses the more ethical and authentic way. I think that's the lack in Sri Lanka. Building export businesses and all of these things are, I think, secondary, because that comes as an outcome. We have been found wanting. A lot of our businesses maintain 2 books of accounts, and I'm sure there's 2 bankers. I know you won't officially comment on this, but I will comment on this officially, because I know for a fact that we are lagging behind in terms of openness. And, this is why we can't be trusted. And the last point I want to make is the government should now make a decision about borrowing for welfare and also borrowing for stimulating businesses. Because if they borrow money for, businesses as a solution to COVID, you will at least be sure of a revenue model, because these businesses have backed the government for decades, or backed the country and, provided employment, foreign exchange or whatever for decades. Now is the time to back those businesses and say, here's the money, run your business during this very difficult COVID period. When revenue catches up, when your income comes up, you don't even have to say that, because they'll pay their taxes and the government coffers will go up. I think that's the kind of mentality we should move from here to there. So unfortunately, I don't have an easy answer to the participants here. I'm saying scenario planning, open book, honest, transparent way of looking at things. Check your businesses very thoroughly through the scenario plannings before you make the jumps and pivots. But I think you've got to have an export mentality regardless of what you do, and just don't do it for the sake of adding export. That's another subject for another day. Thank you.
Right, okay. In fact, it reminds me of this slogan, garments without guilt and ethical tea and so on. So there's some sense of ethicality built in, but what you say is that to harp it more and then to ensure that we have more transparent way of doing business. Thank you. So let me have the thoughts from Aravind. So what is new normal for you? Aravind, you have to unmute your mic.
Sorry. I'm
Yes.
again thinking about people, manpower, realignment. You see, you need to make sure that they retain the resilience, come what may tomorrow, into the future, that we have survived whatever that has been thrown at us. Not today, yesterday or day before, but anything that comes our way into the future, that we have the guts and the capability of managing and going forward. That is what I want Sri Lanka to be.
Say, unleashing of people.
Potential.
Thank you. For the real people potential that we have as Sri Lankans. Good. Sujiva, the final thought from you. Sujiva, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Prof.
Sujiva,
What I feel is, I'm trying to say, Prof.
Yes. Yes, we
Can
can
you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Now, what I see here is, this will be an excellent opportunity for the entire nation to change their entire attitudes and to be a well-disciplined Sri Lankan. I believe, simple thing, when you get into road, you can see the way that, haphazard manner that we are doing, reckless driving and all that, and the queues and all that. I believe that if we can maintain the same patience and behave in a manner, then this is what I like. So then the country will certainly prosper, and we need to start from the scratch. We need to be very positive, and I'm sure that we all will be ready to do that, Prof.
Thank you. And I should mention a very good news for all the participants. Ms. Ravi Edirsinga, there was a technical glitch that we could not get him connected. So the promise is that Pima will arrange a separate dialogue, either between me and Ravi or in a different way, so that we will get Ravi's insights and his thoughts on the whole topic in a different forum. And the way to get connected will be informed to you in due course. So, all good things should have an end. There were technical challenges, there were difficulties, but I think the unprecedented response. So let me thank all the participants. Some got disappointed that they could not enter, and some have joined us through the live streaming through Facebook, and some even did not get the opportunity because of the bandwidth issues. The peak time in the evening from 7 p.m. onwards, where the teledrama time, the YouTube watching time, so the bandwidth challenges, with all those things, I think we had a wonderful thought sharing, which is of very high practical significance. So PIM believes in being practical, and PIMA is the pride of PIM. So let me thank all the 4 eminent panelists. One will be showcased very soon. The other 3 who did a fantastic job in showing their real caliber of giving practical insights. And remember, every crisis is an opportunity. And we see the silver lining in the dark cloud. So it's how we respond to the opportunities that matter. So as real future-oriented business leaders, we need to develop our mindset, skill set, and the tool set. With the right mindset, with the right set of attitudes, with the right upskilling of what we have, and then use of technology and other required tools, we need to have the right mindset, skill set, and the tool set, and then we can make Sri Lanka a better place to live with a true revival of socio-economic upliftment for entire community. So thank you very much from my end. So let me hand over to the PIMA organizers. So thank you for all their hard work, and they were having a challenging time. I used to call them and I used to text them with some technical glitches, and we could not entertain all the questions that were posted, but I think we did the justice for the bulk of them, and also some connecting different questions. So thank you very much for my fellow panelists, and also all the wonderful participants who got connected from local and overseas together.